So yeah, it's clear I haven't done a video for a new movie in a while now, but now I think after seeing Steve Jobs, it's a good time to talk about a new movie again. So I was looking forward to seeing this movie because I've always been really interested in learning the story of Steve Jobs and how he made the company Apple what it is today. This movie has a lot going for it. I mean, it's directed by Danny Boyle, it's written by the same guy who wrote the screenplay for The Social Network, and it has a great cast for it. And now that I've seen it, let's get into it. So the movie begins in 1984, and Apple is preparing a big presentation for the Macintosh 128K it's developed. We're introduced to Steve Jobs, who's played by Michael Fassbender, and, well, he's a dick. I mean, there's no other way to describe it in this movie. He is kind of a jackass. I mean, he threatens the job of one of his co-workers if he can't get the computer to work properly for this presentation. He even tells Steve Wozniak, who's played by Seth Rogen, that he will not publicly acknowledge the Apple II creative team for what essentially led to the Macintosh 128K. At this point, I was like, alright, is there any element of this guy I can get behind? Well, eventually we're introduced to his ex-girlfriend, who's shown up to ask for financial support for their 5-year-old daughter, Lisa. But according to Steve Jobs, Lisa is not his daughter. In fact, he has calculated that apparently 28% of the American male population could in fact be her father, which as far as everyone is concerned is his way of saying his ex-girlfriend is a whore. But during this whole scene, we see him teaching Lisa, how to use the computer properly, clearly bonding with her before he has to go on stage, which was something that I thought was really nice to see here. Then the movie flashes forward to about 1988, where Steve Jobs is giving a new presentation for his new company, Next. And this is where I began to warm up a bit more to how Steve Jobs is portrayed as in this movie. Because here we see him a bit more grounded as a character. Because by this point, Apple CEO, who's played by Jeff Daniels, has ousted Steve Jobs from Apple because of his attitude and how difficult he is to work with. Steve Wozniak has even been featured in a magazine article basically describing how much of a pain in the ass Steve Jobs is. However, Lisa is now 9 years old at this point, she's in 4th grade. And much like Steve Jobs, she apparently has a lot of genius in her too. You hear that, kids? Smarts are genetic, so if you don't do well in school, blame your parents. And here, Steve Jobs is continuing to find ways to bond with her. He asks her about how school is for her, he asks her about music, which is something she's becoming very passionate about. It's just nice to see him further try to make an attempt to establish a relationship with his daughter. And now the last third of this movie takes place in the 90s. Steve Jobs is now back with Apple, he's preparing to now present the iMac to the world. And it's at this point, Lisa is now a freshman at Harvard. And now we find out Steve Jobs is still being a dick. He is refusing to help her pay for her tuition at Harvard. And finally, it gets to the point where Steve Jobs' assistant, played by Kate Winslet, she basically tells him that while he may be one of the most successful and powerful businessmen in the world, that will all mean nothing if he cannot finally make things right with Lisa. With this, he meets up with her, he delays his presentation for her, and he finally says, I've made mistakes, I admit that I'm an asshole, but my relationship with you is far more important than anything I could ever invent. So essentially he now finally accepts her as his daughter. He goes back to the stage to give his presentation, with her proudly watching him from backstage as the movie ends. Yeah, I know, definitely one of my shorter spoilers than I've usually done for you guys, but what can I say? This was a very straightforward movie. I mean, it literally went from beginning, middle to end. Merry Christmas. So all in all, Steve Jobs was not exactly what I thought it was going to be, but I still thought it was a very interesting movie. Every actor in this movie did a great job, especially Michael Fassbender as Steve Jobs. He played the role flawlessly. I could seriously see him getting nominated for an Oscar for this performance. The writing was very well done. The editing was great. I mean, this movie's like around 2 hours long. It felt like not even 1 hour when I was watching it. That is definitely impressive. My cons, however, are 1, I personally would have liked to see more how Steve Jobs was able to make Apple what it was and not necessarily his career in Apple. And 2, I don't feel this movie has much of a watchability factor towards it. This isn't a movie I'm going to go out of my way to see again. This isn't a movie I'm going to buy on Blu-ray and add to my collection. But nevertheless, I still think this was a very solid movie for sure and was definitely something worth going to see. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.